peacefully. Now let's continue to enter the class. Contract towns, these used to be independent. Each one had its own government, army, fortification, and town hall as well. You will see two of them. This is the town hall of the Hradčany town, and then during the afternoon we will see the town hall of the Old Town. This is typical Renaissance style, and when you look at it, you can see that it's decorated with graffiti. What's that? You all know graffiti? Right? So this is like a scratched graffiti. First you have a dark background, and on it you apply a layer of light wet plaster. And while the plaster is still wet, you scratch patterns into it. So you can see this is a very complicated work, and you need to be very talented to create these beautiful decorations typical of Renaissance and Renaissance. There are two reasons for that. One is that this country experienced many religious wars, so in the 20th century people were already kind of fed up with religion. And the other is socialism. After 40 years of socialism, the religion was almost destroyed here. Many members of the church were arrested for 10 or 20 years, even they were followed. Now just follow me, we will go. Style. This white and yellow style, not very decorative but very practical. This was very popular in these areas in the 18th century, and we will see this style from other parts of the castle, but it doesn't mean that all those buildings are from the 18th century. They are usually much older buildings with just facades. So also when you look inside, you can see a stone gate. Behind this gate there is another one before this court. His name was Rudolf II. I'm sure you haven't heard his name before, but in his time he was the most powerful man in Europe. He ruled over Germany, Austria, and many other regions, including this region, which was called Bulgaria in the past. And he was a very strange man. For example, near here in the gardens of the castle, he founded Lion Court, where he kept wild animals, bears, tigers, lions, and he loved one lion, his name was Muhammad, so much that when he had some important matter to discuss, he first went there, consulted the lion, and then he went to meet his advisors. So if you think politicians are acting strange lately, no, don't worry, they were always like that. We are still here. This man, Rudolf II, he was also a very passionate collector. He collected really anything: weapons, stuffed animals, relics, paintings, statues, and so on. That's why he built this courtyard, because he needed more space for his collections. So actually, in that building over there, so, as I mentioned before, this church was founded already in the 14th century, in 1344, and but it took us 600 years to finish the construction with breaks, and I will explain why. Because the construction started at the back. When you look, it's on the right side, and the stone is darkest. There, 8 chapels were built, and it continued in the middle. Here where there is the Golden Gate used to be the end wall, because in the end of the 14th century there was a religious war in this country, so there was not enough money to finish this church properly. So that by here used to be the end wall, and the tower and the rest of the cathedral was missing, and this was the official entrance. It's called the Golden Gate. You can see it in detail. It's very beautiful. It's the most beautiful mosaic in our country. But then in the 19th century, approximately 600 years later, it was decided that the church must be finished. The construction started again, and then it took like 50 years to finish it. And now it looks like this. But our most famous architects worked on the construction of the new part, and they used all techniques and all materials. That's why when you look at the cathedral, and when you look on the old part and the new part on the left side, you almost cannot tell the difference. So they work very precisely, and it's a very beautiful work they did in this church. So also, when you look at the Golden Gate, you can see there are two windows. Do you see it? Those two windows? These windows lead to the crown chamber where Czech crown jewels are kept. And these are very important to us. The door to this safe are locked with 7 keys. Each one is held by some important personality in our country, president, the prime minister, the archbishop. And to open this crown chamber, you need to have these 7 people present here at the same time. Also, once a year they are put on display. We have a small exhibition, and it's a tradition that people stand here in the square for 2 or 3 hours, even in a long queue, just to reach these crown jewels and to bow to them. So it's like a tradition in this country, and we do that now every year. So it's kind of important to us. Okay, now we will go. Forest over there with the tower on it. This is the Petrino. I told you many people walk their dogs through the castle to reach this hill, which is beautiful park. And at the top there is a strange tower. This is what we call the mini Eiffel Tower, because it was built just 2 years after that. It was inspired by it, and even though it's much smaller, it was built on a hill, so the sea level is actually higher than the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Then underneath this viewpoint, there is in the valley there is the most atmospheric part of the city, which we will visit as well. This is the little quarter of Lesser Town, and in front of us is a church with good dome. This is the St. Nicholas Church. We will see it in detail once we reach the end of this tour, or when we will start the second one. I will tell you more about it. And then you look on your left hand side, you can see part of the river, and then you can see a lot of crowds. This is the Charles Bridge that you will visit as well. So we will be one of those people walking there. So we need to prepare for that a lot. So it's good to have lunch before, something to drink. This is a waterman, a popular figure from Czech fairy tales. This man, he waits by the water, by the river, by the lake. He's just sitting there waiting for children to come. When they he drowns them, he keeps their souls in small
Wow.
cups. So,
you first of all, well, to the city center and then on a walking tour to the most important places, to the must-sees. And basically on the way there I'd like to give you a general idea about the city of Vienna, because it's really amazing. Vienna is huge, right? You went to little Austria, but you turned up in huge Vienna. Austria itself it's just the size of South Carolina. It's really small. Since 1918, just the size of South Carolina. Whereas the capital is 4 times as big as Paris. You know, there's so much space. More than 50% of the space of Vienna are green spaces, and you are now in a very lovely part of the city, surrounded by some beautiful parks, very close to Schönbrunn. Respectively, some lovely gardens on the way there. So taking a look to your right hand side, by the way, this is now the neighborhood of your hotel. Taking now look, there's a beautiful white building behind the trees. It's exactly the neighboring building of your hotel. It's the Museum of for the History of Technology. Brilliant, brilliant place to go, right? We've got more than 100 museums in town. There is so much to be discovered, and it's my job actually not to tell you where to go. It's just to give you sort of inspiration, because make up your mind yourself and choose and pick something that you are particularly interested in. And there will be a main focus, of course, also on music and dance, because you're now in the capital of music. Yes, this is the city where Mozart and Beethoven and Vivaldi and Christopher Gluck and so many famous composers lived. There is always this question, why so many composers, why such a huge city, why such a small country today? Well, the thing is, there was a lot of evolution. So basically you are now in the residence of a very important, in former days, very important country. I'm not talking about the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy so far. I'm talking about, well, the name of our country. We are called Österreich, and Österreich means as much as it's the eastern part of the Reich. What is a Reich? And which Reich am I talking about? Hitler later on talked about the Third Reich. What was the Second Reich? What was the First Reich? So you are now in the eastern part of the First Reich, in order to simplify it. It was never called First Reich, but somebody talking about the third one, it must have been something he referred to. So basically, what is the word Reich on about? Reich means as much as wealth. Anytime you want to express that you got a lot of money, you will say you are wealthy. Respectively, where does usually the wealth come from? Well, many times it's from the property you own, from the wealth. Well, when you talk about your wealth, it's about the possessions you've got. And yeah. So, wealthy means as much as Reich in German. And you know an expression called the Commonwealth of Nations? Well, we had something with the benediction of God called Holy Roman Empire. And actually it's the same idea, same choice of words. And the most important family who had the power called the Reich for, that existed for 1,000 years, was the Habsburg family. So the Habsburg family, they had their residence in Vienna, in the easternmost part of the Reich. And their favorite summer residence is what you can now see coming up on your left-hand side. So some of you can already get a glimpse. There are some wonderful buildings in the background, 1,441 rooms, the summer residence of the Habsburg family. And they had, well, they spent all summer long out here, and I mean, seriously, they did not have any Netflix account, right? No access to internet, must have been boring to death. Well, it was not. And why not? Take now look to your left-hand side. First of all, beautiful buildings, but there's a very fancy, important thing. Well, there's this magnificent court of honor that you can now see. The entrance towards is, you know, those 2 pillars with 2 golden eagles on top. It's not pigeons, it's eagles. Yes, indeed. And when you take a look to the right from the 2 eagles, you can see a fancy green roof construction. If you change direction, you will see that again very close, because that is a theater. Such an important place. I think some of you might like to perform inside.
Yeah.
Yay! You could have actually gone there quicker if you would have walked downhill. It would have taken us straight from your hotel. You had to do a little loop with the motor coach. Nevertheless, ahead of you, this fancy green roof construction, that's the theatre, well, one out of several theatres, because there was also a theatre for puppets on strings. But the one, or so many other areas and spaces for recreation, for entertainment, for spending all summer long with. But the thing is, the theatre that you are going to be in, the one with the fancy green roof construction ahead of us, to the right, this is where the children of Maria Theresia themselves were on stage. So it was not performances for them, they were the performances. What's an important thing, actually, for a future ruler, for a future emperor, for a future, governor of a province, of one of the numerous provinces of the family, to know how to speak, how to stand up, how to move. Life is a dance. And when you do it with the correct rhythm, right, when you really kind of listen to the music of life, then you can really get a lot of success, right? Do you agree? Yes! Super. Great that we agree on that. Taking a look to the right-hand side, well, it's just the court of honor and the main building and some of the side, and some few of the side buildings, whereas behind all that, so behind the main palace, there's a huge garden. All in all, it's the surface of Monaco. It's a huge area. There were 3,500 people would work for the Habsburg family, and just for one family. And on the left-hand side, you can see many motor coaches, because Schönbrunn is the #1 place. So it's up to the number of tickets sold in Austria. What's up to touristic hotspots. When I got started to work as a guide, which was back in 1799. Okay, no, 1999. Okay, you were correct. Ages ago. So in 1999, there were 1.9 million visitors in Schönbrunn. 1.9 million that year. Last year, there were 3.9 million visitors in Schönbrunn. Yes. So this is the reason why they're, it's kind of really busy. If you want to see the palace too, you have to have a time slot, respectively, to book in advance. But it's absolutely magnificent. It's well maintained. That there are 40 staterooms, and the rest was actually for the servants and storing and stocking whatever they had to have. Like kettles and woods and food. Because as 3,500 people worked out here, they also had to live here. Had to be, it was far outside the city in those days. We're now in the western part of Vienna. And whatever you can see, all the buildings on the left and on the right were built since, actually maybe the 1800s, maybe. So I already mentioned that Vienna is huge, 4 times as big as Paris, a bit more than 2 million people living here, and there's a very high quality of living. And that's a great thing for you too, because you can really enjoy many of those reasons why there's such a high quality of living. One of the most important things is the quality of first of all, the political and economical and financial stability. Stability is always very helpful, right? We got one of the lowest crime rates in the world in big cities. I mean, we are never safe anywhere in the world. Wherever we find humans, there is some kind of, something going on. But it's a city with one of the lowest crime rates in the world. And there are some wonderful things, like, for example, the public transport. So when you take now a look to your left-hand side, you can see green railings, a green fence, let's call it a green fence, next to the street. We can see green crosses, inside there are green sunflowers, surrounded by green circles, and that indicates that underneath there is a public transport line, an underground train system operating. And the man who made the design for that, he was the architect and designer for the station buildings, as well as the steam engine locomotives they had in those days. And he said, "I want to have some sort of corporate identity. Let's show by the design the function of what it's all about." So the thing is, if you want to transport something, it takes a wheel, correct? It's not enough to have a wheel. You need energy to get the wheel moving and to keep it moving. And so what is the geometric sign or shape or element for the wheel? It's a circle. And what is the first source of energy? It's the sun. So we've got sunflowers inside circles along those, that's the element, that's the decoration element number one on our public transport stations. And if you are not familiar with the city, all it takes is to walk along that green fence and you will turn up at the next subway station. This is really helpful. Very comfortable system. It's 179 lines, and it's also a pretty bargain because until for 15 years now we had a fixed fee, right, which referred to €1 per day when you got the annual ticket. So the annual ticket was at you could get it as a cost of €365. Ticket for the year for 179 lines. This year they really changed the fee up to 460. Wow, this is so much for us, but still actually bargain for when you take a look, or when you take into account what we get from that. So it's 24/7 and accessible to everybody. So in at every station there is at least one exit with elevators, so that can also travel with also on a wheelchair with strollers, no problem at all. That makes it very nice because that turns everybody, independent, so financially and physically independent. Because as it is a very, very cheap, or like not cheap, it's not cheap, it's bargain, right? It's not too expensive, but also easy to make use of it. So very helpful thing. There is another thing or there are many other reasons for the high quality of living, and one of the most important ones is the quality of tap water. Believe it or not, but this morning you had a shower with Evian by the tap. Pure luxury. It's spring water. Really. The thing is, in the 19th century, so many people moved to Vienna. You had an explosion of population. Within just 50 years, we grew from 400,000 inhabitants to 2 million. Figure that, within just 50 years. And they realized, well, we need to do something about, the hygiene, about the water supply. There was not enough water off the ground of Vienna, so this is why they overdid everything, they oversized, overdimensioned everything. There was a general plan made for Vienna. They made they took many reflections into account, and they really planned that one day there would be 4 million people living in Vienna, according to the number of people that actually would move to the city in those days. So they said if it continues that way, we really have to provide everything for 4 million people. And this is why they oversized and they built 2 spring water mains from Vienna into the mountains, to the springs themselves. And still nowadays we are benefiting of that. So if you've got a bottle or whatever that might be, just make use of it as a recipient, whatever there might be inside. So, there's actually one of the best suggestions is to spill away and refill your recipient, your bottle with fresh water. We got 1,800 water fountains all over the city. Very nice thing. And it has an incredibly important impact on the food we got, because whatever in Vienna is steamed or boiled or cooked or made or brewed in Vienna, it's made, cooked, steamed, boiled with the best quality of water possible. So it has an impact on the quality and the taste of pasta, of whatever you enjoy. And believe it or not, currently we even have approximately 450 farmers on Viennese ground. 450 enterprises which are not just registered here with feet outside, no, with feet on Viennese ground. We are currently autonomous with cucumbers, lettuce, tomatoes, and persil. Sounds funny at first sight, but what a difference to the quality of food, right? When you take into account how many times did the cucumber travel the world before it arrived at my plate. So there's a lot of food production, food cultivation, vegetable production on Viennese ground, and that is a very important thing, I think. Right? So it's not just Sachertorte, chocolate cake, right? It's not just sweets, it's not just Mannerschnitten. We have several chocolate production in town, very important too. It's also a lot of, let's call it healthy food or slow food production, and that's really enjoyable. So basically we got 23 districts, and you can always check where you are by taking a look at those blue signs attached at facades. You will see at the very next corner the next ones. There's always a number preceding, and that gives you the number of the district, so 23 in total. And then you can see the name of the street. And street in German is Straße, so let's check that out now. Take a look to the right. You can see now 12 Point Schönbrunner Straße, right, or on the left. Attached on the facades at every corner, at every junction, 12 point. So Straße is street. Sometimes we call it Weg, which is a path. Sometimes we call it Gasse, which is a road. So, and as not every square is square-shaped, we call it Platz, because place actually marks also for, it works also for round-shaped squares, or triangle-shaped squares. Oh, English is so wonderful, isn't it? Yes, absolutely. So let's work a little bit on our German skills, because I think this is the most important thing. So what's the most important word we need to know? The word is tanzen. Tanzen, to dance. Tanzen. And one dance is ein Tanz. Tanz. It's not that difficult actually. What's the actually same importance? Musik. Have a guess what that might be. Musik. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely. And so Musik und Tanz. And how actually, what is the most enjoyable thing actually to combine that? It's ein Ball. Ein Ball is a ball. You know, an evening where you can do ballroom dancing. So a ball, Ball. It's really difficult to speak German, isn't it? Yeah, oh my goodness. Every year we got 450 balls in Vienna. Most of them in winter, because seriously, it's really, when it's too hot, it's difficult to dance Wiener Walzer, because it really turns off the heat. Or in other words, you can turn the radiators down after just one Wiener Walzer. Or any dance actually you dance. So 450 wonderful opportunities to dress like a princess. Well, actually we are princesses, aren't we? So just to dress accordingly, respectively as a prince or a king or a queen, right? It depends on your, well, the maturity. And to be part of the plot. So 450 opportunities to really, like, you know, some of those fairy tales to dance away. And we have many wonderful locations for that. Basically, we have got 80 addresses for music performances, 80 with numerous halls, concert halls each, many times. Musikverein, for example, 5 concert halls. In a Konzerthaus, 5 concert halls. We love that. We really love that. But also for you know, nightclubs. Praterhof has 5 dance floors. Great. By the way, take now a look to the left and to the right. The streets, so both avenues, you got now to the left, so we cross the first one, and the second we're going to cross the second one. So, and in between, so all those that set of 2 boulevards and the green space in between, well, it replaces a second line of defense outside the city of Vienna. We call it Bürg, like the belts. We have 2 sets of fortifications in Vienna. The one immediately around the historic city center, well, it was a city wall, there was water, there was ditch filled with water, and a large field around where nothing actually could hide, so that you could see every enemy from the distance. So it was a very wide system around the historic city center. And the second one, a long avenue of approximately 10 miles length. So in order to save the city from bad guys. But the thing is, why tried so many bad guys to go to Vienna? Well, Vienna was the residence of the Habsburg family. The Habsburg family were the ones who had power on the right. So here we are back at what I wanted to start to talk about. So the Reich was the Holy Roman Empire, it was Germany, it was Austria, large part of today's France, Central Europe, huge empire. And well, until the invasion of modern telecommunication, the smartest thing possible was to be as close as somehow possible to where you expected the enemy to appear. Why? because otherwise we would have lost too much time sending back and forth messengers. And so this is why more and more to the east they would move the residence until they established it at Vienna. But why here at Vienna? There are so many options in the east. It could have been more in the northern part or in the southern part of the east, many options. Why here? At Vienna we have a very specific, we have two very important things, geologically and geographically spoken. Two very important things. First of all, it's the end of the Alpine mountain range. So Vienna, you don't realize that here, but we're still high up. And this is, so it's at Vienna where we got the end of the Alps, and a little bit further, right later on, we will see that. So this abrupt end towards the Danube River. So, and when you are on an elevated spot, so that you can oversee the area, this is incredibly helpful. You can send armies across the plain without problems, but anytime there's a mountain or a hill or something that causes difficulties, every army will slow down. And the Alps have a very particular shape. The end around Vienna is the shape of a crescent moon. As is the shape of a crescent moon, you're protected by the Alps from each side. Open to the east, towards the east. Historically spoken, the data always came from the east. And so this was a very helpful thing to exactly here, right here, establish the residence of the ones of the power of the entire Reich. And there I said something about the second important thing. So first of all, it's the shape and the existence of the Alps. But the second most important thing is the Alps is a river. Because the Danube River is the most territory territory from the west to the east. At any time there is a red rush, any time we have to struggle because we were attacked by red guards. It was a very helpful thing to have the natural support of a natural river. Until the invasion of sea engines, it was a very helpful thing when all it took was to get some boats with more munition, more soldiers, more supplies, more whatever onto the Danube River, and to have it delivered by nature with the support of God. So this is why Vienna was established where it is. And this is the reason why so many bad guys try to go to Vienna, because, well, there's no point in spoiling or wasting time. Whoever wanted to get the power from the Reich.
Baroque monastery and belongs to the most important, how you call it, order, monk order.